Good afternoon, everybody. This is John Weller. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Broadloom. Today, I'm joined by Karen and Buddy Mitchell at Simply Floors in Denver, Colorado, and Neil Daly, our VP of Product and Merchandising here at Broadloom. Today on Webinar Wednesday, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of adding shop at home to your flooring business. This should be a great conversation. There's a lot of years of experience here, a lot of successful shop at home knowledge that is going to be on this call. So I'm going to start out. For anyone that doesn't know who I am, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm John. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, as I said, here at Broadloom. I've been in the flooring business my entire life, and I've been now at Broadloom and working on technology in the flooring space for about 15 years. So with that, Buddy and Karen, if you don't mind just introducing yourself real quickly and talk about your store there in Denver.
I'll start. So I started in flooring in 2010. Before that, I was a general contractor. At the time, I went to work for a company that did strictly shop at home. They were pretty much nationwide. They gave me a van full of samples and a box of business cards and said, go find work. They were very proud that they didn't advertise. They were different than the other big shop at home company out there that's nationwide. I had to go find my own work. I worked for them for 23 months. I started as in April 2010, and by September, I was one of their top salespeople nationwide selling. And from there, about 2 years later, I started a business with a partner, and he and I broke up after 2 years, him going his way and me going my way. And Karen and I started in business in 2014, 100% shop at home in our kitchen table, Karen running the operations and me doing all the sales.
Wow. Well, that's quite the story. And then, Neil, I know you have a very successful and long career in shop at home. Also, if you could share a little bit about that.
Sure. 31 years in flooring, and as part of that journey, I spent 7 years working with a franchise that was flooring shop at home, where I created their mobile showroom systems, both in merchandising and sales systems for consumer filtering, and had access to what was working and what wasn't working with more than 140 locations. So learned a lot through that time there.
That's quite the background. Karen, were you in flooring before you met Buddy and you guys started the shop at home business, or did that just happen through Buddy?
Well, since Buddy and I met when we were teenagers, no, I was not in flooring. I actually had a full career in healthcare, and then when his partnership started, we started seeing the end of that. I had been involved a little bit part-time between that and my other job, and my other job sort of wound down because my company was changing ownership and things like that. So it was a good time to step out of healthcare for me and step into full-time flooring, because we realized that Buddy was a sales expert, basically, just naturally, but not the detail expert and the admin expert. And we believed we could do it better together. So started full-time in July of 2014.
Well, that has worked out extremely well, as I've heard and seen with my own eyes, working with you guys. So let's talk about shop at home. And again, what I'm hoping to do here is share the two perspectives of Buddy, you and Karen's background and doing things the way you've done them, and then Neil being involved in shop at home from his perspective and the way that he's been involved. So the first question I think we should talk about are, if you have a traditional flooring business, and I know you guys started in shop at home and then went the other way, but if you were talking to a retailer who had a traditional retail business, what would be the advantages of adding shop at home to your business? And I'll start with Buddy and Karen, and then we'll pivot over to Neil and let Neil answer that question.
Well, we went a little bit in the opposite direction. We
Right.
started shop at home, and then we started from there into the retail with showrooms. And the benefit of shop at home, the number one benefit is the person invites you to their house. So your lead is lower funnel. Okay. Nobody that's going to listen to this call is going to invite people over for fun. They're only going to invite people to their house when they're ready to buy. You're getting windows, siding, flooring, whatever it is. You're going to. So when I hear people say, hey, they invited me to their house, I'm going to charge a fee for that, I think they're a bad business person, because you're going to close more in the house. All the rules of etiquette apply. You're going to be a guest. They're inviting you to your house. They're ready to purchase from somebody, maybe not you. It's your job to make them ready to purchase from you when you're there. But I don't want people to, if I had a choice, do I want them to walk into my store or do I want them to do a shop at home? 100%, I want to shop at home. Okay. Number two, Your margins can be there, can be really high.
Are they higher or lower than traditional retail, or are they about the same?
Well, Empire's margins are crazy.
How about
Let's
yours?
just be real. Ours are better shop at home than they are retail. Retail, they're shopping a little more. Like I said, they've kind of done their shopping and they're ready to buy when we walk in. Third biggest reason is your salespeople can direct them to your products. Everything we have is private label, so they can't cross shop us. But then the other big part is, as a business owner, I put private label on my van. My salespeople show private label, right? Another reason shop at home is better, is it eliminates being overwhelmed. A lot of people will come into your store, and I have 950 carpets, different styles in my store. My van has 50. I take the 50 best sellers, put them in my store, my ones with my best margins on them, the ones that I get the most money from, and I can focus the consumer. Think about walking into a grocery store with 700 types of ketchup, right? It's hard to determine what ketchup you actually want.
Can we stop right there for 1 second? I'm curious from this group. Why do you have 700? If you believe that you can walk into a house and close the sale with 50 carpets, then why don't you have the same 50 carpets in your store?
Probably because we have a lot of high-end fancy carpet. I mean, I have 5 key displays in my that we sell 90% of it from, but we do want to pick up, I was just going through orders yesterday and doing satisfaction calls to my customers, and I saw a $32,000 wool sale that we just did from Godfrey Hirst that if it wasn't for the showroom, you probably wouldn't put on the van.
So I guess let me ask you this then, based on what you just said. If someone identifies as a shopper who's got a $3 million home and is working with a designer, would you still try to do that in a shop at home appointment, or would you invite them into your showroom because that's where that type of product is?
Our thing is options, right? What option does that consumer want? If you restrict the showroom, which is what we found and why we opened 3 showrooms, versus just the shop at home, you're really taking options away from the homeowner. We found that when we give people the choice, and this is why everybody that does a retail should open up a shop at home division, about 50% of the people want you to come to their house, right? Now you can call ahead. We usually don't, maybe my salesperson will, but we take a curated sample selection and put them on our shop at home vans, right? And that's what they go to. And then from there, they go to, they just go out there. And our close rates are higher for shop at home.
I will say though, kind of why we ended up with sort of a hybrid and into the showroom kind of started by accident, because carpet is super easy to do shop at home, but hard surface is a little harder, mostly because if you have limited space and weight, you're adding larger format samples, and it's, more challenging for the staff to carry them in and out of the house or bring a right number of samples. So what started happening is we were trying to increase our average tickets and move more towards hard surface. What happened is the customers wanted follow-up samples because maybe the salesperson could only bring 4 or 6, and they're like, oh, they didn't exactly see what they wanted. So they did a follow-up in the showroom because we had a space with display set up. We just never really utilized it or advertised it for walk-in. So that kind of started the road towards this hybrid showroom as we started moving more and more into hard surface. So that's, it's not that we can't do hard surface at shop at home, we can, but if customers really have no idea what they want and they want to look at what does an LVP option mean, what does an engineered floor option mean, what does a laminate option mean, then they may start in the showroom, and then those samples are curated from the showroom, and then they go out to the home. So it sort of happened sort of by accident, and we kind of started moving towards that hybrid model a little bit.
And I can confirm the same. When earlier in my career, when I was overseeing 8 locations in retail, we had one that was doing shop at home. And they had much higher average job size, much higher profits, much higher close rates. So when we dug into the data, it said shop at home was delivering, every single KPI at a higher rate. We switched all of our showrooms to trying to move them to the shop at home as they have. The point where we actually coached, you answer the phone with, "Thank you for calling. Would you like to schedule a shop at home appointment, or will you be visiting one of our showrooms?" That proactive initiative to move that customer to where you're going to have the higher close rates, the higher average job size, and the higher gross profit margins just made sense for us, and it had a big impact on our profits.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm going to lead this into in your estimation. I mean, we're talking about the pros and cons of adding shop at home to your traditional flooring store. With technology where it's going and where it is today, when you can order samples now off of a retailer's website, visualize the products. Isn't every retailer in a way supposed to be moving into this hybrid to give that consumer the total flexibility and the way to shop with as little friction as possible. I mean, are you guys? I'm assuming that's leading to even more of these conversations of, do you want us to bring the big samples to your home, or do you want to come into our showroom?
Well, every single person that calls gets asked, like, what kind of project are you working on? And then from there, we say, hey, we've got two options. We can start shop at home. If you have a general idea of what you want or what you're looking for, we can just curate a few samples of those. But carpet, we have all the best ones already on our vehicles. The disadvantage is, you know, with shop at home, when you're talking about pros and cons, is obviously you have to have a vehicle that's going to carry the samples, right? So there's limited space on those vehicles, depending on what kind of vehicles you get, etc. So we always give the homeowners a choice. You know, which one would you like to do? And there many people say, I just want to do a shop at home. That's easier for me.
Karen, that's a lead up to a pretty often thing, something I think a lot of people need to kind of understand from Neil's perspective and you guys there at Simply Floors. What goes in, like, if you were going to go into this, what would you think would be the bare minimum you would have to have in a van of each product category that you're going to bring to a house, that to actually make it a worthwhile appointment with the opportunity to actually close a sale?
Well, we have Buddy can speak to more like what he selects for the vans and stuff, but in the beginning, he literally had a truck and whatever samples he could fit in that truck. He put a custom made pine box in the back that slid out of his bed with a cover over it. He could slide it out and pull the samples out. Mostly deck boards at that time. We were doing, you know, mostly carpet. And then he started revising it as we moved into sort of getting more and more hard surface, you know, realizing that carpet's easy, but the tickets are higher for hard surface.
Well, think about carpet. There's a lot of duplicity in carpet. You have nylon, you have poly, you have cut pile with 3 different styles, solid, multi-tone, and, you know, fleck and tonal. You know, you have a few patterns. We usually have about 35 deck boards in there. You can go from 25 ounces to 70 ounces, you know, in there. And then, you know, so within
show multiple colors in the same carpet, right?
Right. And that's what makes carpet so easy, is a 6 by 6 inch piece of, you know, gray carpet, 3 face weights, you know, 40, 50, 60 ounce, right, in solid poly. And it has 25 colors on the deck board. You don't need more than just a few carpets. Hard surface, you know, we put probably about 25 to 40 LVP in our van. We don't really put a ton of wood in the van. Our wood tickets are so big that we push them to the showroom versus carpet. Now, I know there are companies out there that do very well, you know, with hard surface shop at home. We just found that, guess what? We've got our niche. We do things a lot different than Empire and these other companies. And we do a lot of difference. You know, people say you should close in the home. We do a very hands-off approach because people hate the high pressure close. So we tell them up front, we're not going to ask for money in the home. We're going to let them think about it. And we have very, very high close rates. Our close rates are over 65% for shop at home. They're right around 65 to 75%. And we don't close in the home. That's the way we do it. Other people, we were just at a buying group thing, and the guy there said, you don't close in the home. That's the craziest thing I ever heard. And I was like, well, it worked for us, right?
Neil, I'd love to hear your take on what needs to be in, like, where you came from. What was kind of the protocol for what to bring in the van, and how that, you know, what happened when you went to these appointments?
As a guy who spent 20 plus years merchandising, you'd think I'd say there's a specific way, but in my experience, there's not. You can have success with extremely little samples thrown in the back of a car trunk, and you can have amazing success with a commercial van that has everything you could possibly need to run any appointment anywhere in the country, except for the super high-end unique carpets. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Yes, there's some differences in markets, but for me, I know what worked, which was keep it simple, as much as you can on the front end of it. Have a dedicated salesperson for shop at home, because the one thing that broke every time we tried rolling it out was having a retail salesperson trying to adapt to a shop at home sale process. That was the piece that just never worked for us. But when we put somebody dedicated to shop at home and said, this is your process, they stuck to it.
I agree.
From a product standpoint, though, the one thing I just have to say is make sure it's safe. I've seen lots of folks take like a minivan, rip out the back seats, jack that thing completely full of samples, and they've got it overweighted, so it's not safe. So if you are going to go the model of, you know, lots and lots of samples in the vehicle, just make sure you're getting a commercial vehicle that's rated for the weight that you're going to be carrying inside of it. And as Buddy said, that simple cardboard box when you start out, it works. You know, to give you that extra storage capacity with your samples, you're not going to have something fancy. And the last thing I'll throw out there about the vehicle, put a wrap on. Because when you put a wrap on that vehicle, 2 things happen. Number 1, customers see it everywhere you drive, the mobile billboard. Number 2, when you show up at the customer's house, they know you are the person you say you are. not just some stranger walking up to their house. So there's no perfect, you can have success with either one. I think if you look at the customer satisfaction rate, those that carry a lot more samples have a higher satisfaction rate. We're able to do more in that first visit for the customer. So it creates an efficiency.
So let's talk about the process. Let's just talk through an appointment. So somebody calls you guys and says, okay, we're interested in carpet. We have 2 bedrooms that we would like to do. We'd like you to come out. Can we just talk about the process and what you would actually do through that when you get to this house?
Yeah, I'm pretty much do that. Karen, I don't think she's ever done that. So,
No, I do more the in-office process, like from scheduling and logistics, and Buddy does more the sales actual techniques.
I teach my salespeople, the way our process goes is they walk in naked, meaning they go up to the door with no samples in their hand, right? They ring the doorbell, they go in, they sit down with the customer, or they kind of walk the space and say, what are you looking for? We want to put LVP, or let's just say exactly, we want carpet in these 2 bedrooms. Okay, great. We then ask them technical questions to confuse them a little bit. We say, do you want cut pile, LCL, or pattern or looped carpet? A lot of times they'll say, I have no idea. They'll say, what kind of tones do you want? And then our big thing, and I've heard it just in doing my satisfaction calls that I do every week. I love how educated your salespeople are and how they educate us. My sales staff then educate them on, before they take samples in, on what cut pile is versus what LCL is, what versus loop. They educate them on a little bit of fiber type. And I tell my sales staff, talk to them about technical stuff, even if they don't ask, until their eyes roll back in their head and now they believe that you're an expert, right? It's kind of like you guys at Broadloom start talking to me about click-through rate and all this stuff. And at some point I just kind of give up and say, I don't know what that shit means, but this guy knows what he's talking about, right? We want the same thing in carpet. And if they start talking technical at the beginning, then once they kind of get that sense that the people now trust them technically, then they start talking style and color. Then they say, you know what, let me go out and grab, you don't know what you want, let me go grab one. And they'll grab a cut pile, they'll grab a couple patterns, and they'll grab a loop and they'll bring them in. Or if the people say, oh no, I want a big fluff, this is in my bedroom, I want it soft, I want it this, then they'll say, okay, you don't want a pattern, then you want a big cut pile carpet. Do you like solid, fleck, or tonal? Well, I don't know what that is. Let me go grab 3 of those. They go grab 3 of those. They go in, they build rapport. They measure. That's one of the things that Neil said, you don't want your showroom staff doing shop at home. I'll tell you the biggest reason you don't want that is because this has kind of got me and Karen recently. Shop at home people run 10 appointments in a week. They make their own schedule. They get to do whatever they want type things versus being babysitting a showroom. All your showroom people will want to do shop at home. I'll just tell you, you've got to hire people and you've got to really focus on training on site assessment because they're going to be doing the site assessment while the people are picking colors, right?
But just to be clear, our showroom people do their own site assessments currently.
Yeah, we decided to do that because we didn't want to hire different models. So our sales staff, because it also, like Karen was telling me yesterday, these 2 ladies came in. They were talking to Macy, one of our wonderful sales ladies, and they were like, wow, you'll actually come to my house and it'll be you and not somebody else. And Macy's like, yeah. She goes, yeah, so much is lost. And the lady said something like, so much is lost in the translation. We had another company talk to someone at the showroom and somebody came out and didn't know anything. You know, it was some guy doing a site assessment, right? When we meet in the showroom, the continuity for us works.
Let me ask you this. The consumer now has chosen a product, or say they chose 2 products and they say they like these products. Are you going to write up a quote and give them a proposal there on the spot before you leave?
We don't. We tell them that we're going to. This is very controversial. Everybody tells us we're stupid. We have a 65-70% close rate. So I don't care. It's worked for us in the past. And we tell them that up front. We're not doing that. My sales staff usually leads, writes the quote and emails it to them. And then because we use RLM, one of your programs that we love, we can track how fast our sales staff are following up with that shop at home appointment. Usually it's that day. And that usually gets us where we need to be. So,
and all the teams that I've worked with were deliver the price in the home whenever possible. You know, if it was a whole house and some complexity to it, those would certainly be a second call visit. But we are at the other end of the spectrum where we always, coach to share the price in the home and ask, not necessarily for the order in every scenario, but are we close to where you want to be? Because if not, I can chase other options for prices.
Well, and then to your point, Neil, it's not that we don't give prices in the home because we do. We just don't give an exact quote in the home.
Yep.
They will be told the square feet price installed. They will even be told a rough estimate of the total project. But particularly for hard surface, now carpet's, fairly easy, particularly for hard surface when there's a lot of site assessment issues to deal with, transitions and figuring out floor heights and all kinds of different things.
Baseboards.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're like, hey, I'm going to run this by my production department, particularly because you run into unique situations in every single home.
Sure.
So that's where they say, okay, your project's going to be about $20,000, but I'm going to work on it, detail it out, and I'm going to get you the exact quote, by end of today or or first thing tomorrow or something like that.
And the ones that we were doing was the other end of that spectrum, which was pretty much we quote everything right down to the final, with two exceptions. If we were doing custom showers that required some design work, and custom stairs. Those were the two that would just throw up a need for a different process. But again, this speaks to the point that both work. You have a multi-million dollar business with super high close rates, and it's successful for you that way. And I think a lot of people think there has to be a singular solution. I think we've proven that you don't have to have a single solution. You just have to have somebody that can get in the house and have a great conversation with the customer.
You also have to have talented sales staff, and you have to have a directed process that they follow almost every time, because we are striving for consistency of customer experience. And so if everybody kind of does their own thing sort of willy-nilly, one person may get the quote the same day and the other one may get it 3 or 4 days later. And the only times we end up with some slight problems is when a customer calls up 2 or 3 days later and they say, hey, Kristen was out on Monday and I never got my quote. Well, the first thing we do is we go into RLM and we verify their email address that there wasn't a typo. And then in most cases, that email is actually in RLM right there. And I say, hey, I see that it was sent out. Your email address is correct. Hey, have you checked your spam folder? Oh, no, I didn't realize that. And then most of the time they find it, or every now and then we find a typo and we're like, we'll get it out to you right away. There's a typo in your email. But that's what RLM does for us, is it gives us that consistency of transparency among the team, because I don't think you can do shop at home when you don't have a system that all the rest of your team members can see, because you're not seeing your staff members every day, every hour. You're not walking to their office and talking to them. You're not walking out to the floor and speaking to them. They're in their car. They're driving from appointment to appointment all day. You can't interrupt their appointment and speak to them.
The other thing is,
if with you guys more on this one, because our old mantra was, if it's not repeatable, it's not coachable. So everything that we had for in-home process and follow-up was absolutely a tight process. It wasn't a canned pitch, but there was absolute steps 1 through 9 that we did in the house. And follow-up was a very consistent process. I wish we had something like RLM, but we were old folders and pens at the time.
Let me say this. We also, a part of our process that Karen was saying is, Kristen sends the email, and I've trained every one of my sales staff to make a phone call right then and there, the second you send it. Hey, Mrs. Smith, I just sent you an email with your quote. Hopefully you get it. If you have any questions or if you don't get it, call me. Now, if that customer calls 3 or 4 days later, the question would be, did Kristen do that? Or did the person A, go to spam and she never listens to her voicemail, which is, happens. But, Karen has a slogan: if it's not in RLM, you didn't do it, right? So if Kristen didn't make a note that she made a phone call follow-up, then we could just say, hey, you didn't call this homeowner. Oh, I did. Well, you didn't put it in RLM. You didn't do it, right? So that way the RLM gives you that transparency that you need. Now, I'm not here trying to sell people RLM. They can have any customer service management software they want. We just took it and we made it our system. And I think that's what everybody here needs to do. If they're going to do shop at home, they need to create their system that they're comfortable with, right? So in my 4 or 5 years, 6 years that I sold carpet door to door, shop at home, I heard multiple times from multiple people how much they hated the other shop at home company out there. People wouldn't leave the house. People wouldn't do this. People, they're high pressure closed. They talk to their manager. So we kind of super invent that when someone calls and we say, hey, we just want you to know, we're not going to try to close you in the home. We're going to come out. We're going to measure it. We're going to email you a quote. You're making too big of a decision to make a spur of the moment decision. Now that sets us up, because we're Simply Floors. We focus on boutique designer experience, with our sales staff being mostly women, with degrees in interior design, right? And so that sets us apart from the other shop at home companies that are going out there and saying, you don't leave the house until you have a signed, check, right? And so that's why it works for us, because we're not just doing this, we hire people and they come in and they want to change our process, right? And I tell them, you don't understand. My wife for the last 10 years has got up and thought about every scenario out there, and so have I. So, we created the Simply Floors system. And so if you're Ajax Floors in Mississippi and you have a showroom and you want to create Ajax Floors in Mississippi system, do it your way. The only thing I'm going to tell you, and the reason I would be so big on shop at home, is your close rates will go up. They're inviting you into their house because that means they're going to buy from somebody, right? And you have them as a captive audience. It's way better than, going to a showroom and there's 4 people in the showroom and 2 sales staff and they're bouncing back and forth between the 4 because yesterday nobody walked in, right? We have days at our showrooms, nobody walks in. And then the next day we have 4 all walk in between, noon and 1 o'clock and we have people there and they can't help the people. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we can schedule up people to come every hour like we would like. You know what I'm saying? They show up when they show up. Shop at home, you can schedule your time, right?
Well, I mean, I will tell you this. We've been talking about Shop at Home now for about 30 minutes, and I've heard nothing but high margins, better close rates. Everyone should do it. The name of this webinar was the pros and cons of Shop at Home. So I'm just curious from this group, if I have a traditional flooring business, are there any cons to having Shop at Home added to my business?
I would say that it's probably challenging going from a showroom model to shop at home because you have to think through the processes. I think you can wing it in the showroom a little bit more. So you actually have to sit down and decide how it's going to go before you do it. You can't just let people wing it and kind of do their own thing. There are obviously some expenses. Like we did it the reverse. Like it was cheap for us to do shop at home because we just had a single vehicle and just like samples. And literally we had samples stored in our garage. Like we didn't even have, technically we had some displays, but they were in a storage unit. So you have to obviously have a vehicle that will do it. That's sometimes a startup expense. You have to order additional samples. You're going to have some additional liability. You have to make sure your drivers are insurable if they're going to be going out into job sites. You have to set liability requirements for that kind of thing, just as a business owner, just to cover yourself. I think a lot of people think you have to go out and buy $100,000, Sprinter van. I don't think that's necessary. I know that Neil said don't use minivans, but that's all we use right now. And we get them maintained regularly. We buy them used. I mean, we have a garage that knows that what weights we carry. And, sometimes we have to replace the shocks more often or make sure we do the brakes more often or whatever, but it works. And possibly maybe because they're not super, super heavy with hard surface, but it's mostly carpet. But that was a cost-effective way for us to do it.
And mine had 200 hard surface samples in the back, and that's why I had to have the permission.
Yeah, and we don't carry that many hard surface. So.
We also
Ford Transit Connects, which are the
Yeah.
these, and those work really well for us. And I've seen a lot of folks in the land market using those too.
When we were adding vans in the beginning, I mean, we were buying vans for like $10,000 cash, right? But you can't buy vans like that anymore. So you're usually talking, even used, you're still talking 20.
I also had female sales staff and they didn't want to drive around,
Really, really big vehicles. Yeah.
8-foot bed, 3/4 ton, 4-wheel drive pickup. They'd rather drive a minivan,
Or a transit van with no side windows where they really couldn't see,
Neil,
And we've got mountains near us too, so we got to be able to go into the mountains.
Any cons, Neil, from your side?
Yeah, finding people and holding accountability to a process. I completely agree with what Karen's saying. That you have to be much more regimented in leading your team to hold them to that process, because there's too many things going on different than a traditional showroom experience, that you have to keep your controls on it. You have to have your weekly meetings with your people. You've got to hold them to a very different standard for follow-up. And that was the hard part, because, in many cases, a lot of our showroom owners that I've worked with, they're on autopilot. The business is working in the showroom model. You can't turn Shop at Home onto autopilot. You have to manage.
I'm going to jump in here. One of the benefits of Broadloom is the ownership, and a lot of people there are not in flooring, right? And I think that really works for you. You're coming in with an innovative approach, saying, hey, we don't, like Todd says, I don't know that much about flooring, or he didn't when he started, right? He understood parts of business and business types so I'd say the biggest thing you got to do is get out of your own head, right? If you get in your own head and you're in your own system and you're in your own rut, and you say, well, a homeowner's not going to be happy unless they see 950 carpets, then you're going to go out and you're going to dabble in it, right? You're going to dabble in it, and it's not going to work for you. You have to sit down, you have to make a commitment, and you're going to have to say, I'm going to figure out how this works. And I'm not going to think like I've thought for the last 35 years that this is the only way. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to innovate. And innovating is, and this is true. So a couple of years ago, I saw for the first time our leads starting to decline. So we started in 2014, and it was July of 2014, and I had built what I would call a book of business, which was, different remodel contractors and real estate agents and people buying from me. And we did about 800,000 our first year. right? But I brought that from Carpet Direct, and I brought that from the other partnership I had. I brought that business with me. From 2014 through 2021, we grew on average 35 to 40% a year. And in 2021, we did $8 million. And it was 99% shop at home. We had one showroom. And so we changed our website, and we went from by appointment only to walk-ins welcome at our Wheat Ridge location. And we went from 5 walk-ins where people just showed up to about 15 or 20 just overnight, right? That was in 2021. Well, we come into 2022, and I'm watching our my key indicators of what it is, and I see our lead count going down. And so I was talking to my Broadloom specialist, and he said, well, you realize that people won't drive more than 20 minutes to your showroom, right? That's that's what they say. If you're more than 20 minutes, there's a statistic that most people won't drive that far. And I RLM. I went to RLM and said, can you add zip codes? So I started looking at different zip codes, and we decided to open a location down south, right? But we had been marketing down there. So before I went to a location, we have a location that is 45 minutes. We have a zip code that's 45 to 50 minutes from our north showroom. And it's the town of Parker in Castle Rock. And those were 2 of our biggest zip codes with our dollar volume. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now I had a lot of builders down there. I eliminated builders and it dropped completely. But now we've had, so at their suggestion, we opened a south showroom. And now that south showroom, we're getting so many walk-ins down there. I'm just surprised at how many people are going there. And so we expanded our market that way. But we're in a city of 3 million people, and most of them are more than 20 minutes from our location. So if you're a single location retailer, and you want Broadloom or your web company to market 45, 50 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes during traffic to another location, those people are not going to get in their car and drive to your showroom. You're limited. And shop at home, you can convert some of them to come to you, right?
100%. This is so much bigger with shop at home.
Yeah, but also I did find, and this is one of the negatives, okay? Your marketing is not as successful 45, 50 an hour from your home. We were spending a lot of money down there, and it just was not working, right? So that's a negative at home. Don't expect to turn on, have Broadloom start advertising to through Google to a zip code an hour and 15 minutes and get the same results as you are going to get close. You just aren't, right?
And that's something I'll add to as a big negative, because with a traditional brick and mortar, over time, as long as you do the right things, 2/3 of your business or more is going to be repeat referral business to that shop at home. To that brick and mortar store. With shop at home, you're the lead business. You are constantly having to spend more money in marketing than the typical flooring business to generate and sustain lead volume than a brick and mortar will have for an investment. And you have to think outside of the box for every different way you can to generate that lead. Digital marketing is great, but to your point, where your map pin is located on the Google map is so important for effectiveness today that you got to think about it differently from a marketing budget. You've got to do more to get those leads than you would a brick and mortar that's well established.
Well, just know that the reason that works is Google is they are targeting your location. So anything that you're doing, as you said, buddy, 20, 30, 40 minutes away from your location, the only way you can reach those consumers is through paid advertising. If a consumer goes online and types in flooring store near me, it's very likely you will not even show up in that search, because your store location or your warehouse or whatever it is that's located in the Google map is 30 or 40 minutes away. Google's going to show the closest flooring store to your location. So it's really expensive when you start thinking about expanding your market outside of where you have a physical location.
And that's why we had to get the location that we have. Like, we've been 2 years into it, and we had to get a physical location. We assumed we were going to make it mostly offices, but we had displays that we're forced to purchase through vendors, right? So we're like, okay, we'll just set them up in here, and it'll be a little mini showroom, but it'll really be mostly offices, but mostly to get that Google location. Like, that's why we moved in here, and we're in an industrial office park. Like, our sign is not even visible from the street, and we're not allowed to put a sign on the street in the complex we're in, because it's mostly warehouse and small office. We've converted it to showroom, but we built our Google presence over the last 8 years that we've been in this location, 8 years. And that's what's bringing people to walk in these doors, because we're in a major street. You cannot drive down the street and see our sign.
Well, that is the power of Google. On the flip side of that, what we were just saying, if you do build up an organic presence with a location, it doesn't matter where it is. It could be in the middle of nowhere, and you will get people to find you and show up at your store. And that,
because I know other dealers who are in the same boat. They're not in a visible location, but they work their Google very, very strongly, and people find them.
absolutely.
Let me say this. You wanted negatives of shop at home. Okay. Lead acquisition. So if you've been to any of the boot camps, or if you've been to any you call it FloorCon, right? Go to FloorCon. You have a speaker there, Brian Elias, right? And he's with a shop at home company. And he gave a speech last year at FloorCon about shop at home. And he started talking about his acquisition costs, right? And his big thing is you're not in the flooring business, you're in the new customer business, right? So if you're in the new customer business, I keep going back to, because for the last 2 months, I've been doing all the satisfaction calls. And I'm looking at all the, just people that just drive by. They drove by our south location, they saw the sign, and they came in. Now that's the excuse that, that's because we as a company are incredibly diligent. Our sales staff, every time we talk, how did they hear of us? If I'm going to spend a crap load of money, and I spend a crap load of money on Google, I'll just tell you right now, I've been tracking it. Google costs me about 12 to 14% of my sale. Okay. If you think, now I'm in a huge market, I got a lot of competition. If it's less for you and you live in Podunk, Iowa, right, it's going to be less than you are if you live in a major market. But for my major market, pay-per-click is costing me 12 to 14% of our gross sell for directly related advertising, meaning I spent this and the homeowner says we found you on the internet, right? Now, I know some of that internet is they found me for free because you guys also are optimizing me, right? And some of them is my pay-per-click. We are still 40 to 45% referral or repeat business, okay? But we've grown every year because we work our referrals and repeats, and Karen's processes, and I say that because she runs our processes, are so good that we have happy customers. You cannot grow your business until you pay someone to come into your store. If you're all referral, repeat, and drive-by, you're going to sit there and be stagnant. Take some money, put it into Google, find a spot, and bring in those new customers. When those customers come into your store, do an incredibly good job of customer experience and everything, sell them, and now you have someone that you can build your referral and repeat on. You can't build your referral and repeat business if you don't have new people walking into your door.
I was just talking to a store owner that was bragging about the repeat and referral business being 80% of his business. He had a marketing expenditure of 2%.
Yeah.
And then when I asked the question, how much has your business grown over the last year, 2 years, 5 years? It was almost zero, because
people are happy with their jobs.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to get to. You're right. In the biggest difference I've seen in marketing is, yes, you can get to a nice size volume if you do all the right things in retail, but the moment you shut off marketing on the shop at home, your leads stop. They just stop.
Well, the other thing that we do, which is something that maybe some people have access to or just haven't thought of, and we've done this from the beginning, but we have a book now button on our website. We do not even have to answer the phone to get appointments. And they can book at any time 24/7. And so if somebody calls up and they says, hey, I have to talk to my husband before I can schedule an appointment, I say, you know what? Go to our website, hit that button, book now. And if he doesn't get home till midnight, you guys can book an appointment at midnight. We'll see it in the morning and we will be at your, now we have limits on less than 24 hours, that kind of thing. Like they can't book at midnight for an 8 a.m. appointment. But at the same time, we get in Monday morning and we have half a dozen appointments new for the week.
It's fantastic.
So how many people do you guys have that are focused on shop at home? Is everybody at your store involved in shop at home, or is it just a specific person or two?
No, all 6 of our sales staff do shop at home.
Okay.
Well, sort of. I mean, we have 3 people that are focused on shop at home and then 2 that are more showroom based, but they do their own site assessments. So they don't get the online shop at home appointments, meaning the ones that come in automatically, but they get all the walk-ins and then do all their own site assessments. So in that, and they can have scheduled appointments by the receptionist for shop at home if somebody else isn't available and they can get a schedule, but they're not available for online scheduling because they do have to be covering showrooms certain days.
Right. That's the negative of a showroom, is someone has to sit there and babysit it. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
so
the expectations of our shop at home people are pretty flexible hours, but a lot of self-starting, a lot of accountability, a lot of, they work odd hours sometimes, but that works for them. Whereas other people want to be off at 5.
Our best year was 2021. It was our peak. We've had a couple of years where we're down. Right now in 2024, we're on pace to go back to that 8 million. Our volume is up, right? And we're running at the same run rate as we ran in 2021, right? So that said, in 2021, we had 5 sales staff sell $8 million and they were all shop at home.
Yes.
We didn't switch to the showroom model until we started seeing a decline in shop at home leads, right? And I think that was the market more than that we were doing something wrong. And so I just wanted to give people more options. So, May 1st, we open our 3rd location and we'll have 3 locations, and we have to have someone sitting at each one of those locations
Every day.
6 days a week. So our our shop at home people, they're now having to sit in a showroom and we're having to hire more sales staff. But our whole goal is, to get up over 10, 12 million. And so, that's what we're driving for. We're growth focused. We're not sit back and let it run on autopilot. Karen and I are not that type of people. So
Right. All right. I got one last question. So if I'm sitting here and I have a traditional flooring store and I've been advertising a certain way for the last 10 years, is your messaging or is there anything that you're doing differently to attract a shop at home customer versus a walk-in customer?
no. I'll just tell you that when we first started, we went with Simply Floors, but my thought was option flooring. I thought about starting the name and call it option flooring and give people options, right? I think all you have to do now, I think you have to like, go big, right? Go for it. If you're going to do it, commit. And then on your website, you have to give the people the option and you have to make it very easy for them to book. You have to make that, you need to have Broadloom put, the little book now button in there. Drive people to that, give them the option. Every one of our pages has basically either the form fill, which I hate because then I have to chase them. I'd rather them click the button and book an appointment, right? But every one of our pages, if you go to our website, is book now, book now, book now, book now, right? They click on that, they fill out that form, and we have an appointment with them, right? If you push that and you give them the option, so like our homepage, they're rebuilding it right now because I just said, hey, I'll pay to refresh my website. And our homepage, when you go online or on the mobile, it's going to be first thing, shop at home, second thing, visit our 3 showrooms, and all of those are going to be above the fold. I don't want them below the fold. I know Broadloom was like pushing visualization and shop our catalog above the fold. And I was like, I don't care. You guys are wrong. I'm right. And that's me. Right. And who knows who's right. I want them to say, I can go to this location. I can book an appointment. Right.
I'll take an appointment over a form fill any day.
They're going to cut that, Karen. They're not going to put that in.
Might
They
be
can't
smart.
track it as well. I'll just tell you, I understand, when you're running a website company, you've got to be able to show people results. And that result is harder to show than a formula. You know what I'm saying? But everybody here, and I'll say, John and Neil both agree with this, everything we do online, our number one goal is to get somebody in our showroom or booking an appointment to buy floors. Browsing my catalog, all that, or for the people at the high part of the funnel, and you got to have that. I'm not saying you don't. I think you need the visualization and you need all that as a flooring store. But what you really need more than any of that is that dude or female or both couple to walk into your showroom and talk to a real human being. Right.
The way I talk about what you just said, you cannot meet somebody on the very first date and ask them to marry you. You need to at least ask them where they're from, a little bit about their family, get to know them, make them trust you before you ask them to come into your family or into your showroom. So that's why visualization and sample ordering and all those things we believe are important to get them to that place to take that next step that you're talking about, which is either come to your store, call you, fill out a form, or ask for a shop at home appointment.
The question of what would you do first for me is simple. Set a specific budget for shop at home marketing. Aside, because it's not going to be the historical, very small percentage for retail, it's going to be much bigger. And the second thing would be make sure that you have someone dedicated to running those you want. If you do those, if you put the money into the marketing, you get the leads, and you hold the person accountable to the success of those leads, it'll work in just about any way you want to market.
Well, I think the other piece of that is about holding people accountable. You've got to give them incentive. And our shop at home salespeople are very well paid. And they are on commission only, which is a little controversial, but they are talented people. They work their tails off and they make good money as a result. So and that they're looking for quality of life. They're looking for balancing their work-life schedule. We're offering those things to them because they can write their paperwork at home and they don't have to come and sit at a desk. Now there's pros and cons to that because sometimes you have trouble unplugging, and that's, they have to figure out how to manage that for their own work-life balance. But even in the showroom, it's challenging because when we have everybody that can do shop at home, that means we have to actually schedule our showrooms very, very carefully because we have to give them that continuity, that ability to go out into the home of the customer they met in the showroom. So we have to actually slot them for days for in-homes. And we have to slot them for days in the showroom. So that creates a lot of scheduling challenges. So it really is probably better if you're a traditional showroom model and you have, sales associates scheduled for a showroom, that you designate one at a time and put your feet in the water and say, okay, I'm going to get one vehicle. I'm going to sample one set of vans, or even let them use their personal vehicle. Like there's nothing wrong with that. pick 10 or 15 samples and say, we're going to give this a shot. And this person's going to be shop at home and we're going to try to get them 5 or 6 appointments a week. That's where you kind of step in and start.
So, I mean, I would tell you this. I've listened. This has been a really good conversation. And the one thing that I came out of here with is there's no 100% clear like path that you have to take, whether it's 100 samples, 50 samples, 15 samples, whether you're doing hard surface, soft surface, high end or low end. You got to feel it out and kind of work within what works in your market. But the one thing I keep hearing a recurring theme of, you're going to have to be extremely organized. And it sounds like if you're not using a customer relation management software tool, there's no chance you're going to be able to successfully pull this off, because managing all of those engagements across all the different ways that they could possibly work with your company, and then knowing where you are in the stage of that relationship would be impossible if you didn't have that software holding everything.
100%, because when our sales staff are out in a home and one of their previous clients calls, I have a system when I can go in and look at anything, and I don't have to bug that salesperson in there. And like to either John or Buddy's point earlier about like being in your rut, like I wasn't ever in flooring. I came out of actually home healthcare. I was used to going into people's homes and I had to be organized. And in healthcare, you have to be documenting things. So I didn't come from a flooring perspective at all. I'm just simply taking some of my natural bents and applying them to where I saw the need. And it wasn't out of a retail sitting in a showroom, and selling anything. It was, how are we going to organize this? Because we just added staff, and it's a little different than me calling up my husband and asking him what he told the customer. Because now I've got 3 people, and now we got to keep track of it more because now there's more people.
Last thing I'll add to that list you summarized, John, is you have to have enough profit margin to pay for the leads and to pay the higher commissions to get the better people. And Buddy shared before, he's part of Buying Group. He gives them that private label. That's a distinct advantage, that if you have the ability to put private label products in that vehicle, do it. Because if you're going to carry that higher margin, because you have that higher marketing cost, higher commissions, etc., vehicle expenditures, you just have to make it less shoppable for the customer to go to your competition with that stuff. So agreed with all the above. Just wanted to add that private label, every chance you get.
Well,
because if people cross shop us, we'll often lose the sale, if they cross shop on an open line.
Right. Yeah. Well, you don't want to go through all that effort and end up at a customer's house and they get shopped. That would definitely not be advantageous. Well, this has been awesome. I got to listen. We have a lot of people sitting here waiting to ask questions about what we're talking about. So I want to let these guys have at it. I've never seen this many people actually waiting to ask questions. So we are going to open up Q&A here in a second. I've never had any experience with Shop at Home, but one of the things I do want to tell everybody listening to this, Neil brought up a point about making sure your vehicle is safe and set up for what you're doing. My only experience with this, when I first got my job selling flooring, I got a job at World Carpet selling carpet, and my boss yelled at me because I didn't have all 78 products in my van. And so I went out and bought a Chevy Lumina minivan, tore the seats out, as Neil mentioned, and had all 78 samples in there. My very first day, I'm driving through Tampa, Florida, 100 miles an hour during rush hour. I hit a red light, slam on the brakes. And if you ever know how a Chevy Lumina van used to be shaped, it was like a point, like the space shuttle. I ended up with all 78 samples on top of my head in the middle of the intersection, blocking traffic while I was uncovering with those samples. So it is very important that you do at least plan out what you're going to do with that vehicle and understand what's going to happen when you hit the brakes going 50 miles an hour. Well, listen, I'm going to open this up for questions, and we will continue with, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that you guys still want to talk about. And as people ask questions, we'll continue to have this conversation. Okay. Well, that was a great conversation. And as I said, there is a lot of questions here to answer. So let's get started on the questions. So the very first question we have is, how much do you spend getting leads / paid advertising? From Bill in Tucson, Arizona.
We spend about 30 to 35,000 a month.
Is that so? Let me give that a little more.
Okay. When I started spending $500 a month, and I tried other forms of advertising. I believe you need to have revenue streams. I don't think you put all your eggs in one basket. We do a little radio advertising. We do a lot of, I do a lot of Google. Google's, heavy. And then, we started at $500 a month back when Creating Your Space was running our thing. And as we've grown, you know, we committed to doing about 7 to 10% of our gross, and we're not there because as we've advertised and as we've done a good job, we get the referrals and repeats. So, you know, we're sitting at about 4 to 5% of our gross going towards advertising, but I don't see advertising as an expense. I see it as an investment. It's like putting into your 401k, because the more you advertise, the more you'll sell, the more money you'll make. You have to figure out what it costs you to buy a lead, and you have to put it into the cost of doing business. And so we spend about 5% of our gross.
I think that's a good point. You know, a lot of retailers that we talk to are looking at it as just an added expense, where listening to you and listening to a lot of the larger dealers who have been doing this for a long time, it is it's the cost of a job. So when a job goes through, there is a margin in there, and it's built in specifically for this. And so again, if you look, you mentioned Empire when you were talking earlier. And I know that we've had some conversations with people who have worked there, and they put into their every job that's done, there's 9% of that job is going to advertising as it's passed through the company. So I think you have to budget that in, or you won't have the advertising budget as you're going forward if it's not budgeted into each and every job.
Let me say this: I'm scared, right? Because if you take 30 times 12, that's like $360,000 a month, right? So $360,000 a year. Karen and I could put that in our pocket, but if we quit advertising, how much would our business shrink? And then, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, do we cut back on advertising? And, you know, Karen and I probably have more discussions than we should on, should we spend more, right? You know, to ramp up how fast we grow.
Right.
So,
right. All right. So the next question we have, and I get this question all the time. This comes from Todd. How do you get your team to use RLM? I know that, you know, RLM is what you guys have said basically is the key to your success. How do you guys get your team to use it?
We be assholes.
Not really.
I'm going to say this. I don't understand business owners not being able to get employees to do what they ask them to do. I write their frickin' check, or Karen does, right? And so I just tell my team, you know, part of it. So we got RLM. We bring it in. It was before Broadloom had it. I'm working with Jason Goldberg back then, right? I bring it in, and I hear rumblings in my sales staff that they don't want to use it. So we have a sales meeting, and I sat there and I just looked at him and I said, there's two options. You either use it or you work for somebody else. Right.
Yeah. I mean, Karen, you were about to chime in, and I'm curious your take on this, but I want to say just one thing. I have heard Jason say point blank, you either use this or you don't work here.
Yes.
So I know that's his stance. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say that we're not quite, yes, we had to have that conversation when staff were not used to using it, but I'm just telling you, it's so integral to our process now. We get very little kickback. We get very little. It's trained from the beginning. It's set up as an expectation. We talk about it in the interview. So there is no options. This is the way Simply Floors does things. And Buddy's sort of right in the sense that why do you have employees that don't want to do things the way you ask them to do it? Why are they still working for you? But it's not adversarial because they want to be here. And if they understand how it makes them more efficient and they understand how it makes the team more efficient, we get a lot of buy-in because we are a team. And, you know, nobody wants to be the one that causes the production department problems. And if they don't document something in RLM or they don't set something up correctly, that's when we have problems. And it happens. I mean, nobody's perfect in it. It's not 100% seamless. We are humans and we have error. But 99% of the time, when there's a big problem, it's because something got missed in the system. Now, are we forgiving of that? Of course. But if it becomes a pattern, then we have a sit down and be like, hey, what's going on? Why are you missing all this stuff? Right? It's
Let me
part
say
of
this.
how we train.
when I had that conversation, that was back in 2017 or 18, whenever
18,
Jason
yeah, early 18.
first announced it, right? I had someone earlier, I saw a question, how much is good money, right? So my sales staff at that time, my best salesperson was a lady named Amy Farnham. And she was kind of the leader of all my sales staff because she was by far better than all of the others at the time. And she was closing and selling about $90,000 a year. So she had a run rate where she was going to make about $94,000.
Right.
She implemented RLM, and even her, she immediately went from 90 to 140. She just like jumped up within the 2 months and started selling more jobs. What is good money? I've had salespeople here make $240,000 a year. You know what I'm saying? And and it's part of that is because RLM gives you the efficiency, because you can't miss that. I'm a great salesperson, but when someone asks me a question, I forget it and I don't follow up.
Listen,
RLM doesn't let you do that.
The reason Salesforce.com is one of the most successful and most profitable companies in the world is because the world has recognized that customer relation management systems is a game changer. And Jason created Retail Lead Management. He said, I was doing $10 million in sales and stuck. I created this software and went to $200 million. So I don't think there's any denying that if you're not leveraging customer relation management software and you're running a business, you're wasting a lot of your effort and you're never going to achieve what you could if you had the tool like that. All right, we got a lot of questions, so we gotta try to get through here. The next question we have up. Here you go. What tools do you use for scheduling your shop appointments?
I can answer that. There's a lot of calendar apps out there. So you just kind of have to find the one that works best for you. We currently use one that used to be called Acuity, but then as soon as we started using it, got purchased by Squarespace. So it's basically a plugin, and it links to our website, and people can go to our website, click a button, and it goes straight to our scheduling software. It has a lot of backside programming that you can do with it. So we found it pretty useful because you can set up parameters for scheduling. You can set up individual people's schedules of when they're available. There's a lot of things. You can block one person out for just showroom appointments and then another person for shop at home. So there's a lot you can do with on the back with it.
Awesome. Hey, Neil, I want to ask you something, because that question that we had before is really a critical question. And you worked at a place where there were hundreds of people being introduced to shop at home. So I'm going to back up just for 1 second, and we can attach it to this also. But how did you guys go about getting all these business owners to use the software and the tools that you had when you were doing this?
Yeah, as Karen stated, it was really taught from day one, because what happens is when you have hundreds of leads a day that you have to manage corporately, that's money that is out the window if they're not being reacted to. So it was integrated from day one in training. It was set as a requisite, and our systems were set up so that there was red flags if there was an action at a certain time period. And we had our account managers calling those stores going, what are you doing? This lead hasn't been touched in 3 days. As an example. So, train, have systems in place that support it, and hold accountability to it. It's that simple, whether it's a startup or if it's hundreds of leads a day that you're managing.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. It sounds like, what question do we have here? Maybe we don't have time for one more question. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pick the question. Somebody asked in here, if you private label all your products, how do you answer the complaints that you could have bought the same product cheaper somewhere else?
I've never had that question.
And I'll go the other extreme. If you don't private label it, they are going to find it cheaper somewhere else. So
I honestly, I've never had, Karen, have we had that? I don't know.
Because if it's private label, they can't figure out what it is.
Well, they can. I'm not saying they can't. But I've never had that question if they've purchased from me. Maybe someone goes and finds it and they don't buy from me, but I've never had that question after the fact.
The percentage of customers that are able to identify product specifically to a competitor's crossover is a tiny percentage, and I'll take that every day other than 100%.
Okay. Okay. Next question I have is, with all those vans in stores, what is your annual volume?
We already said about 8 million.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
we're on a
the
run
group that I
rate for
work-
hoping to hit 8 million this year.
The franchise group that I worked with averaged $2.5 million per business, and there's 200 businesses, so 500 plus million.
It took us a while to get there, but we have very talented staff as well.
I'll also say this: we have a hub with a warehouse, and then 2 satellite stores. It's not like those stores cost us. I mean, they do cost us money in rent, but they don't. It's not like we're going and renting a great big showroom with a giant warehouse to run it.
Right.
So
All of our
Okay.
staff, our support staff is centralized in one location.
Okay. Mike Peterson asked, what is your turnaround time between the customer meeting and the installation?
Depends on the product and how fast we can get it here.
2 weeks.
About a week, 1 to 2 weeks for carpet and 2 weeks for hard surface. We can do it faster than that if we have something in stock. We try not to do hard surface sooner than 2 weeks because transitions and just like setting up the job details and things like that. But we can do things faster. We just typically prefer not to.
Okay. Travis Dexter asked, if you're closing at 65 to 70%, what gross profit margin do you operate on?
Around 40%.
The businesses I worked with were consistently 48% on average, with a close rate typically right around 40% on average.
Okay. James Buckles, how important is it for you to have stocking product represented for your shop at home products?
Not. It's not important.
None.
Okay. Rachel Berlin asks, do you train your sales team with a script to use when you're talking to customers?
Yes and no. No, not. There's not a script, but I do train them on what to say, and I like it to be a little more organic. I know scripts work. I've never been that organized.
We have some phone scripts that people use for answering the phones and things like that, and kind of like a general, here's how you progress through the questions and answers, or here's how you present your information. But everybody has different personalities, so we try to avoid like kind of memorizing scripts.
I saw a question or a guy state high-end customers don't want to know the specifics of carpet, and I would highly disagree with that. I sell high-end customers all the time. Our average ticket is over $6,500. Most of our tickets we have $50,000, $60,000 tickets. I just had a $30,000 wool job. I would say that customer's high end. You know, and they do want to know specifics. They want to know what they're buying is good. So I do believe educational sales are still important, even with high-end customers. I think it's more important with a high-end customer. I'm kind of like, I was a little baffled when I saw that statement / question come through. So
right. There's another question about training in here from Mike Peterson. He's asking, how do you train all your salespeople? And I think he's talking about like for floor prep and whatever. What to look out for. Salespeople are not necessarily great at reading the tape measure.
I think that's a huge misconception.
we don't use tape measures, so that's maybe it. We use lasers, so
we use better technology.
will do it for you. Go buy Measure Square and sit down and take time and train your people, because that's coming from, and I don't know Mike, but I'm going to say this, that's coming from an installer thinking that people that have never installed don't know how to sell floors. And I'll say, I can hire a 24-year-old lady and teach her just as much as you know in about 3 months. So I'm sorry.
I've been using Measure Square since it was created.
and it is the easiest tool, especially with lasers today, to get a plan figured quickly and easily. And it's very easy to train. If you're not using Measure Square in your business today, get it tomorrow, because nobody has the time to teach people how to read fractions on a tape measure.
Yeah, we don't use tape measures.
Okay. I don't know if I see any more questions. Let me see.
I think somebody had a question more specifically about DocuSign. I can answer that one. You want to read that one? If we don't close in the home, like for DocuSign, we send out an emailed contract and they approve it, like say, yeah, this looks good. And then they get an Adobe Sign electronic document every time.
So the question was, how do you close then if you do not close in the home?
We email them.
It's all electronic. They don't have to come back.
Neil, I know you have a different perspective.
Yeah, I always try to do things in person with our businesses on the first call, including asking for the order if it made sense. And on the other side of it, the close rate live was about 40%. When you rolled in all the follow-up, it got us over 50% with the other organizations. And that's, again, at the higher margins. That 45 to 48% was pretty normal. So it's going to be different as far as, effectiveness. But signing in the home also requires federal right of rescission paperwork. I just throw that out there to make sure that if you're doing in-home sales and asking for orders in the home, you have that document as part of your process. It's required by federal law. If you don't know what the right of rescission paperwork is, Google it and make sure it's part of your process.
Okay.
So for context, a new salesperson, if they've been here about a year, will be in the high 5 figures. And once they've been here a year or more, they're over 6 figures. And if they're very, very skilled, they'll be in the high 6s, like 200,000 or close to.
Okay. And the next question is, Kelly asked, can you talk about how you got started? How did you come up with the name of your business?
I got started because I was desperate. I'm a salesperson through and through, and I needed to find something to sell. And carpet and flooring fell into my lap, and I started selling carpet and flooring. And I didn't know anything about carpet, and I didn't know anything of, being a general contractor, I understood a little bit about hard surface, but I just knew fuzzy side up on carpet. So that's how I got into it. The name, we went all the way through it. We have a slogan that we make Simply Floors. We make buying a floor simple, stress-free, and affordable. I really wanted to make it simple on the homeowner. I didn't want them to have a complicated sell cycle. So that's kind of how we got Simply Floors. And it was also the idea that we don't do anything else. We just do Simply Floors. It was, I don't know. We had a lot of different names.
I got started because my aunt and uncle owned a flooring business, and I was free labor and worked for a lot of the major brands ever since. So I didn't get to pick a name.
Cool. All right. We have one more question. This is from NDF SAH Appointments. What about floor prep that you can't see at the time of sale?
We have that in our terms and conditions, and we explain that we may have to do floor prep once we tear out their floor. And it's in the homeowners, it's something my salespeople talk about. Hey, there's carpet covering your basement floor. I don't know if it's flat enough for LVP or not. We're going to set you up what the average home in Colorado needs floor prep wise. That's about what it's going to cost. And when we tear out the floor, our installers will go over you what it's going to take to get it flat enough to.
It's always indicated that it's added to the bill after, and they agree to that up front.
We
just had a sales meeting before this, before we came into this thing. And that sales meeting, we talked about addressing floor prep head on right at the beginning of the sale. Because, you know,
Some of our competitors don't bring it up.
We did something similar, but probably charged a little bit more than most would feel comfortable with it on the front end. We dollar cost averaged it into every job. We knew on average when we did 100 sales, it was going to cost us X amount of dollars. We just did the math and we built it into a flat fee in every single job. And we explained to the customer, we're going to prep your floors if it's needed, and we're going to make sure it's right as part of our total quote. So we also made sure customers understood that was a differentiator. We just did the math and put it across the board. Did it make us a little higher than some of the other folks out there? Yeah. But we explained why that the prep was going to be included.
Okay. And listen, I said this was the last question, but another one came in. I think it's a really good question. So I lied. TF asks, do you have a way to guarantee balance payments, perhaps credit card pre-authorizations?
Yes, we do. They sign in the terms and conditions that if they pay by credit card, we auto charge their card upon completion, upon major completion. So you can't have $5,000 waiting for one transition that got back ordered or broken. And then if they pay with a check, all of our sales staff are trained to get a ACH form signed from the homeowner that we can run it through their account upon completion. So we don't really have accounts receivable that stick out there.
We also normally ask for 100% up front, and when they fight us, we go to 80%.
Yeah,
and then 20% on completion.
Where it's allowable by law, all of our locations would just ask, how would you like to pay for it, cash, check, or charge? Once they said yes. And in the locations that we couldn't, we took the maximum allowable by law. And the last piece was exactly what, they do. If you have the customer push back on it, do a 10% or a 20% holdback, get the rest of it up front. There's no reason not to when the home centers are charging 100% up front.
Yeah, and we'll occasionally allow a variation of that if it's a really big job and we get a little bit of pushback. We'll say, okay, you can put 50% deposit down. The first day we show up, we'll charge your card for the 30%, and then we'll do the 20% upon completion. And that's with larger projects where people are like, hey, we don't want to pay you $50,000 today. But we do use a payment system that allows essentially a tokenization of their credit card. Like it's stored in an encrypted system and we just have to put in the amount and run the card again. There's no pre-authorization. There's nothing to do. It's all automatic.
Awesome. Well, listen, this was amazing. And I can't thank you guys enough. For the audience that doesn't know this, Buddy and Karen are moving into a new location today. And they actually put off moving over there to do this webinar, take the time with you guys and share their secrets of how they've done what they've been able to accomplish at Shop at Home. I'm assuming from their success, this webinar probably cost them about $50,000 because they're leads sitting in RLM right now that they need to take care of. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And Neil, thank you very, very much. Neil's got, 25 years of experience in the Shop at Home field. So having this group together to talk about this has been really, really awesome and productive. So that was the most questions that I've ever been involved in a webinar. So for everyone that stuck around for the hour and 14 minutes, I appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you very much, everybody.